Hey everybody, welcome to Two Dads, One Car, where we talk about modern fatherhood. My friends, this is going to be a special episode, and this is a guest I've not met in person, but I've been listening to his sermons via podcast. He is the lead pastor of a local church here called Reality Church. Also, he's a father of three, I think, twins, and also a younger daughter. I think they're all about high school age, and so it'll be really cool to pick his brain on how he navigates a busy parenting life with three kids, also his work in the church and beyond. And full disclaimer, I'm not religious by any means, but I'm also been really curious about this journey of faith that I'm on currently. And so I've talked about that on my Substack, and this is going to be, I think, not the first pastor, but the second pastor I've had on, but really this one with the even more intentional lens and to kind of explore this. And so if this idea of faith and fatherhood resonates with you, take a listen. If it doesn't, totally fine too. I think you'll get some good nuggets from this conversation as we talk to John here. So chat soon. I'm just going to pick him up right around the corner. Cheers. Well, John, hey, so great to meet you in person. I've been hearing your voice on a podcast, so this is great to put a name to a face.
Okay.
This is fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm honored and a little embarrassed that I never know how to feel when people listen to the podcast. Not that it's a lot of people that I interact with that do it, but no, it's great to meet you as well.
It's super inspirational. We'll drop a link in the show notes. But let's start off with just a snapshot of your family, like number of kids, rough ages, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. So I'm 43 and I have three kids. We have twins that are 15, boy, girl, and then a daughter that's 13. So that's us.
You have your hands full.
Yeah. It's full, but we have this year our daughter youngest is in grade 7, so she's going into high school next year. So all of them will be in high school, which feels like pretty significant. It's marking a significant change that's happening. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you said yours 2 and.
4 and 2 months.
4 and 2 months. Okay.
4 and 2 months. So this is great because you've walked the path.
Maybe stumbled the path.
Stumbled the path, walked the path, but this is great, right? Just to learn, and I'm going to be peppering you with questions because I have a lot on my mind to try to figure out navigating this first journey and more.
Yeah.
But allowed to kick it off with for you, what is an unspoken truth about fatherhood? Something that's not shared as widely that could use additional light from your perspective.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and it's now 16 years since I first became a dad, so it feels like a long time ago in many ways. I think if I was to say maybe a couple things, one thing I remember when I became a new dad that was shocking to me was the way I said it was there's no more Saturdays. So you do your work, and then you've got all these responsibilities during the week, but then your kids don't take Saturday off. And so that was one of the things that my wife and I had certain rhythms of rest and cleaning one Saturday.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a movement at the time that was kind of especially with moms, that talked about eat when your kids eat, sleep when your kids sleep. And then my wife was always saying, yeah, and clean when your kids clean. But it was one of those things, a lot of those rhythms changed. And so you couldn't rely on a Saturday as kind of a catch-up day in the same way. And so when we first had kids, I remember that was quite an adjustment and something that I probably knew maybe intuitively, but had not thought through. And I'd say another thing, maybe this is more current to me now and reflecting, is probably an unspoken truth, is it's really an opportunity to learn about yourself. And, your partner is a mirror, especially the longer that you've been married, or I've been married anyways, I would speak about myself. My wife becomes maybe a more crisp mirror for me of myself, and unfortunately sometimes it's the things my weaknesses and stuff like that, I see it reflected in the ways that the things I do or don't bring to the relationship. And kids are the same thing, and as they get older, they are in more of an even unflinching mirror, because they're you see more clearly. I'm because I remember now being a teenager. I don't remember being 4 or 2 or 2 months old, but I do remember being a teenager, and I see some of these things in my kids now, and some of them are amazingly really beautiful things. A lot of that honestly comes from my wife, but some of them too I see from myself, and I'm oh man, I recognize that just because I'm older and maybe I don't act out on those things like I did when I was 14 or 15, there's still probably some traits within me that I'm forced to become aware of, if that makes sense.
What are you noticing, like in terms of glimpses that show up? Because yeah, I'm super curious. Yeah.
Yeah. As I said to you leading up, I always, I don't want to throw anyone else
Of course,
other
of
than
course,
myself
of
under
course,
the bus.
of
I'll
course.
speak honestly about myself, but like, we joke in our house that there's, so my wife and I are both firstborns, and then we had two twins. And so it's four firstborns. So we joke it's like just a massive power struggle all the time in our house. And we're all pretty stubborn, I would say, in our own ways.
Yeah.
And so that can be a really great thing. I think of specifically our eldest daughter, in the ways that she's stubborn about so many good things, and how I hope that really sets her out to be want to bring so much of herself to the world.
Yeah.
But then there's also the stubbornness. But you can't look too far to be like, who am I going to blame for this? It's like, oh, I know where that comes from, right? I only have to look in the mirror.
It's interesting what you mentioned about like that reflection of the mirror, right? Because like the positives, the negatives, all of that, because there is a connection there, right? Whether to you or even to like your ancestors or beyond.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's so interesting to think about like, oh wow, like it could either be a replica or good or bad, right?
Yeah, totally.
One theme I've been exploring recently is really, as for me, as I'm in this, at least this first 4 years of being a father, noticing like the things that I am doing subconsciously, maybe from the way that I was parented from my dad or my mom, right? And that carrying through. But curious to know if there's anything for you like that's trickled down from the way you were parented, and how do you and your wife kind of discuss that, right?
Yeah, I think. Well, I can't remember who said this. I think it's actually from the maybe U.S. Army or Navy, but it's at your when you come to moments of crisis or whatever, you don't revert to your best self, you revert to your training.
That's right.
And so I definitely think that's true. You can have lots of great hopes and dreams of how to parent or how to do anything really, but then oftentimes it does come down to just being, I'm gonna do what was done for me and to me. And so I think that's definitely true. My wife and I talk a lot. So we are probably much more optimistic about ourselves and our ability to parent.
Love it.
And sometimes as your kids get older and gain a will of their own, then some of those things come off a little bit. And so I think that we're maybe more self-aware of that now, how our parents has affected us in different ways. And I would say, especially for me as a dad, you're asking email or over text a little bit about like some of the formative like influences, or did I do a lot of reading and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I didn't really do a lot of reading about it before I became a dad. And one of the assumptions I just made, and I do think it's true, is that my dad's just a good dad.
Yeah.
It reminded me actually a lot when I started driving. My parents, I always just assumed they were good drivers. And I went for my learner's license. I didn't study once. I just asked myself in the test, well, what will my parents do? And I grew up in a small town, like 2 sets of lights. So there's things like switching lanes I didn't know anything about. And so I absolutely failed the test. And I realized like my parents are doing a good job at driving. We'd never, they're not reckless or getting us in accidents. But at the same time, there's a lot that we could grow and learn from. And so and for me, I would say as a Christian, one of the things that I'm trying to learn from, but also giving me the ability to bless and forgive and be thankful for my parents at the same time, is really the picture of God as a parent. And as a father, in the Bible, he's both the father and a mother. But reflecting on it for me as a father, there are some things that my dad didn't do or couldn't do for us. And but God offers and promises those things. And so not to bury my dad for those things and be like, you didn't do this for me.
Right.
And also, I think at this season of my life, hoping my kids would have the same grace for me eventually, So maybe it's kind of self-serving, but also being able to say like, oh, my kids might need that, or I even want that in my life. I actually long for this from a father or father figure, and I can receive it from God and receive it from other people without having to really, just throw shade on my parents.
there's so many like branches I want to explore here, right? Because like one thing that comes to mind is that you're right though, right? That moment of that notion of grace. I
Mm,
think one of the biggest moments of reckoning for myself is like, my God, my parents had no idea what they were doing.
yeah.
Like zero.
Yeah. My mom will often say, we'll ask her, because we talk to my parents a lot about parenting, and we'll be like, what did you do? And they're like, my mom will say, I was just in a sugar fog. I don't remember anything. So yeah, it's true. They like learn on the fly, which it sounds like it's similar for your
It
parents.
is, yeah. Like they're both like new immigrants to Canada, blue collar
Mm,
workers, just trying to put food and bread on the table, or rice
yeah.
in my case, right? And so it was different.
Mm,
I'd be interested because we talk about how parenting changes, right? Because I'm sure when your dad was raising you, the times were different. Now,
mm,
we're in this time of technology, and one of the themes we've also explored in this podcast is also the influence of technology on our children. Three of your kids are in either in high school or about to enter high school, right? This is probably a very formative time,
mm.
even leading up to it. Do you think about technology and like how do you navigate that, especially with we hear about the influence of social media now, AI companions. Like
Mm.
you're in the thicket of it. I'm still early on, right? My daughter's watching Paw Patrol right now,
Right.
right?
Yeah, which is his own cult, yeah. Yeah, our kids watch Paw Patrol as well. Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, first of all, I just want to be really clear
Please.
that we're not doing it perfectly at all. I think, um, I would say one of the things we were much more intentional about screen time than uh, before COVID,
Yeah.
and because of the ages of kids, our kids during COVID, and then also, we were trying to learn how to take a church online at that time, which our church is really not geared to do. It's a very community based space. And then also I was diagnosed with cancer at the beginning of COVID. And so I went through my own cancer journey, and that meant our whole family went through our own cancer journey on top of everything else that's going on in the world. So it was a time where our kids were at home, and my wife did a phenomenal job, especially with them. But we did give them a lot more screen time at that time, and it's been very hard, I would say, even though that was 5 years ago. It's actually been very hard to continue to try to claw that back. It's felt like a lot of clawing back since then. And so I think that is a huge part of it. I think just conversations about technology, trying to have really good habits with technology, both for yourself and for your kids, whether that's a time when they go away, seasons of or moments in the day where you're present with people without technology.
Yeah.
One of the nice things right now about technology is that you can have, especially phones, is that you can have access to or you have limitations you can put on your kids' screen time in that from a parental account, which is really, really helpful. Can be really helpful. But yeah, it's a constant battle. I mean, I don't know that I have any like good answers. It was me. I'm probably more of a Luddite, and so I would probably more. I would pull back our screen time. My wife is less so.
Yeah.
And to be fair, she's also the one primary like caregiver at home with them more often.
Yes.
Just because of my work schedule.
Yeah.
So she does have to deal with it in a different way that I don't. But it's a really big one, and one that we in our community, actually, we have these moments of time where we discuss our church community. I mean, we discuss a relevant topic, and so we've discussed housing in the city, for example, but we're also going to discuss technology here soon, because I think as adults we also need to understand maybe our relationship with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think I maybe would say sometimes the lack of clarity on what kids should do is coming from a lack of clarity of how I should be interacting with technology as well.
It's so interesting, right? Because as you're sharing, right, the world's evolving around us. There's no perfect answer here, right? And
Yeah.
and thanks for sharing your story as well, going through probably some tough times during COVID and with health and with the community around you. There's also the benefits of technology, right? I forgot to allude in the beginning that so John is a lead pastor of a local church here called Reality, and I've been listening to his sermons. Like I'm on this faith the journey, and I wrote about it on my blog, which I published on Substack. And one of the themes we explore in the podcast is the 4 F's, like finances, fellowship, family, and faith, right? And so that's the background, and it allows your message to transcend and to reach many others. And so there's, of course, there's that positive aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
And so very much is that probably that intentional use of it, right?
Yeah, and allows us to do stuff like this and even connect with one another. So there are great things about technology too. Yeah. And
What a,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I'd say
Please, please,
I
please, please.
tend to find myself not as a booster. This is language from a philosopher, Charles Taylor, but booster or knocker, he calls it, where it's like he's not all for it or he's not all against it. Um, I would say I'm very similar with most things with technology. AI would be another example with my kids. It's here, whether we like it or not. So I don't think it's the devil. And I don't think it's the savior of the world. And really comes down to, in the biblical language, it's like discernment, which is really a question of how do we take wisdom and live now in this moment. And I think that that's the challenge ahead of all of us, whether it's people of faith or parents or whatever, people that are working for Rivian and trying to put technology in vehicles, right? So all of us have that question of discernment and wisdom.
I really like that word discernment, right? Because it's easy to just go with the flow and just be caught up in the tide, which happens as well, right? But
Yeah.
the ability to discern and just take that moment of pause. How do you like, as a parent of three who are in high school, but all three are all about to enter high school, and also, thinking about the church community and your work and coaching on the side, how do you navigate your time? How do you navigate discernment? How do you, find that groundedness? Like, what's your routine? Love to kind of pick your brain on that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that you ask now. We're in a season where I've three different jobs, three kids, one wife.
Yeah.
I try to stay active. I was coaching two different sports teams. So life is just really full in the last season and probably pushed us to our limits. So I'd say my wife and I are very much in a season of like, oh, I don't know that might have been too much. So I just mentioned that at the beginning to say I don't know that I'm always the best barometer for that. I think we practice a Sabbath, which is an ancient spiritual practice, and so it's a day of rest and resistance, and so that's an important practice for me. Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Um, that's an important renewing practice, and yeah, I think in terms of thinking about my my discernment around my time, and I also think like in the context of relationship, it's having that conversation partner with you. We talk about like your partner as a mirror, your kids as a mirror, but also they can be barometers for you.
Yes.
And so finding ways, I'm not very good. I will probably just push myself to the limit or as much as I possibly can. My wife's not like that, and that can be both like something that brings disagreement, but it also can be something that is such a blessing to me, because then I can hear a voice that is not my own speaking into my life. And I think that's part of what's happening in this season, is she's saying as a barometer, I think you're overtaxed and need to pull back a little bit. Yeah.
This is so topical because it's something that I struggle with, and it's something that our mutual connection, Daniel. So Daniel and I do like morning walks, like once a week, and this has been a topic of our walk last time. It's like sometimes we take on a lot, right? There's these seasons where the work's busy, the family's busy, the community's like, we take on a lot of these things. And sometimes the solution, okay, I'll just take on more, right, as a way to solve. But the barometer is our partners. We're like, well, wait a second here, right? Like being that check and balance for us a little bit.
Yeah.
It's so topical.
Yeah, and it's the gift, I'd say, like even wider, of being in community. I mean, I know we don't, not everybody has a partner that can do that, and so having other people in community. So I guess that one thing I would say that our church, a rhythm that we try to keep, is called a rule of life, which again is like ancient language from the monastic community in the Christian tradition, but it's asking the question, in this season of my life, how am I giving myself over to the most important things and the most important story that I can be living in, with everything pulling me in different directions. And so we look at it seasonally, and that's also how I look at my life in this season, not like for the rest of my life or whatever, but in this season, what can I be giving myself to? And then we have a process where we chat with each other in community called a member check-in, and we talk about three questions. In this last season of my life, have I moved towards or away from God? And why might that be? In the last season of my life, have I moved towards or away from community? Why might that be? And just non-judgmentally. And then finally, in this last season of my life, have I moved towards or away from loving the city? And so we just take time to reflect on them, and then we come together to discuss with a trusted group of people who can ask questions and speak into your life. In the tradition that I pastor in, one of the discernment tools they have is called Clarity Committee, which is basically a group of generally older trusted people, and you come to them with a discernment question, but they can only ask questions.
Interesting.
So they can't give you answers.
Oh.
But they try to help you to listen to God and to the voice of the community, but only by asking questions. And so it's a version of that where people can come around you and be involved in your life and ask questions of you. You know, if I say like, I really have struggled with my partner, or I've really struggled in being part of this faith community in this past season, that they might be able to come to you and say, well, you know what, why do you think that is? Non-judgmentally, do you think you have too much on your plate? Those types of questions. And that really does help you discern and then set a pattern. What are the habits I'm going to be putting into for this next season of my life that help me address some of these things?
I really like that. And I think one thing I do want to call it in a positive way is that, you know, one of the reasons I'm drawn to your messaging is it's so relevant. Like, it's very, regardless of those in the those who listen to podcasts, comes from various different backgrounds, right? But I think what's really interesting about your sermons and the way you talk is like it's so topical to the city, right? You talk about the city, you talk about current things that are happening, right? And you kind of bring it to light that, okay, that makes sense to me, as opposed to from like a framework of like, you know, shame or fear, or like, this is like, these are real things that we're all navigating. And those questions, like, especially for those who in the season of fatherhood, of new parenthood, right? These are things like, okay, let me reassess, like, how am I in this season of life, right? I'd be curious, because you mentioned city a few times. Is there something that ties you to that way of thinking? Like, okay, how do I, this localness that you mentioned, right? Because throughout I'm just curious. I want to pull on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's again, it comes very much from the spirituality and the spiritual, not the tradition I come from so much, but the Christian tradition, is that the city is a place where, in the Christian tradition, where the poor are. And so there's a call to be close to and near to the poor. It's where the world comes. And so there's always a call to be with people and in the world. It's a place where people are, I'd say, especially in Canada, where some of the most important cultural, not decisions, it's not so much about that, but it's like the start of the conversation is happening. Let's put it that way. And it also puts you the city puts you in a pinch in a certain way, which means like, it's not, you know, the suburb life, I think part of the promise there is that you can have everything that you want. It's whether it delivers on that or not, I don't know. I'm not trying to argue that, but the city puts you in a pinch of being like learning how to sacrifice. So I do think it's a type of gymnasium, just like silence and solitude, or maybe going on a silent retreat in the woods could be also a discipline. Living in the city forces you into making sacrifice, which is a deep part of the Christian tradition. So yeah, I think that in that way, just the consistent pattern in the biblical stories of people going to cities. I also was deeply influenced by a guy named Tim Keller, who's a pastor in New York, who talked about this, and the migration of Christians away from the city had been the consistent pattern in North America for a long time.
Right.
So he was formative in my life of calling me and many other people. I think you, Dan and Meg, would be other people too. So like that calling back to the city, a vision for the city, a vision for being here. So those are all elements, I guess, of being in the city.
That really resonates in many ways, because so much, you know, there's so much stuff happening internationally and worldwide and beyond, but it's also, okay, where can we have the greatest impact? And it's really in the city. Right? It's in our neighborhood, it's in our block, it's in our community, right? It is in this like this gathering place.
Mm.
Like that has the probably the greatest return of happiness and joy and impact,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to looking beyond our borders, which of course like there's it's devastating left and right, but so easy to get sucked into that, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that's such a good reminder of you know, where we have the capacity. It's a season of life. What can we do locally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about for you? You know, I feel
Please,
like
please,
it's been
please,
less of
please.
a conversation.
Yeah.
I would love it to be. You know, what you said your parents are immigrants. Did you move here originally, and is this where you grew up in Vancouver?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, my dad's from Vietnam, my mom's from China, and they both moved here as new immigrants, learning English together, and that's where they met. I think waiting in line to sign up for like ESL, English as a second language class.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
they met,
Some great.
fell in love, and then 2 years later, here I am.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years later, I just magically appeared
Okay. All right.
into this world. So you know, where we're just driving around, this is kind of the area I grew up with,
Okay, yeah.
right? It's this East Van area, and just seeing it transform to where it is, but also that pockets of community, right? Of gathering, of places, the old coffee shops, the mom and pop stores.
Mm.
Earlier we drove past a flower shop where I bought the first rose for my girlfriend in grade 7, right?
Oh,
Like,
wow.
There's
Yeah.
stuff.
Deep rooted.
There's deep rootedness, but it's
Yeah.
it's interesting though, right? Because like right after I graduated, I really wanted to get out of the city, right? I felt this yearning to like now. I was like, I'm never gonna come back. And there's something about that rebellion nature, right?
Mm.
And lo and behold, right, the moment that you know we lived in different cities, but the moment my wife and I wanted to start a family, it's like salmon coming back to the the hatchery, right? I was like, where do we live? Oh, let's probably move back from. We were like gallivanting in Asia at the time.
Okay.
And so coming back here, laying down the roots and just reconnecting with those around, including Daniel and others.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
that's been the journey to the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever watched the movie Lady Bird. Have you ever seen it?
No, not yet, yeah.
Well, it's not kind of giving it away, but it's an old movie. But it's basically this teenage girl who's in rebellion, sort of against her parents. I think she grows up in Sacramento.
Yeah.
But she's kind of in this place and wants to get out. And then there's this beautiful moment at the end where she calls her mom and she just leaves this voicemail saying she's given herself the name Lady Bird, and she says it's a name that I gave myself. And then I forget what her actual name is, but she uses that name in the voicemail. She says it's me. I forget what her name is, but she's kind of that retaking up of that story that's been gifted to her from her family, coming with the warts and all. And it's just it's a beautiful way to, it's a beautiful movie, but it's also like resonant with your story too, of kind of like a time of rebelling against, and then sometimes seeing how coming back can also be a very grounding, I think you used the word rooted, thing.
Yeah. It is. You're right. It is the groundedness. It's like that tree or seed that's taking root.
Yeah.
Like how do I feel like there's like, oh, you mean you're back in your hometown? There's like this pushback, I suppose, but at the same time, what we're seeing outside in the social media sphere and beyond, like you see this painting of a picture. So I'll share a real story here. I don't think I've talked about this live on the podcast before, but you know, my wife and I were living this fancy expat life, right? Where I was getting paid like USD salary in Vietnam, and it was very glitzy. And even on Instagram, it looked really glitzy, but I never felt so empty in my life. Like there was something lacking. Like it was like, wow, like what is happening, right? You know, I was drinking every other night. Like we were just going partying, and I was working hard, making the good money, but also like there's an emptiness to it. Right? There's an emptiness. And that's when I realized that this path can't work. Like there has to be a shift.
Yeah.
There has to, and that's when I really dive deep into like personal development, reading books on everything left and right to kind of like refigure out this path. And so when you talk about the city localness, like coming back here has been coming with fresh lens. Like, you know, Vancouver's not a place to escape from. I was like, oh, how can I grow? How can I develop? How can I build? How can I connect with fathers in the community like yourself, right?
Yeah.
And how do we create that dialogue and help where I can?
Yeah. Well, that's amazing.
That's the journey.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it is an interesting place because so many people do come here somewhat to escape.
Yeah.
I grew up in the prairies, so there's a lot of Albertans here who came to not be in Alberta anymore, you know, like, and I feel like there's so many people that I meet that are not from here. But then it's beautiful to hear how you're coming back here, but then also to like give something here, and I think that's part of what we need in the city is neighborhood connectors with other people, building connections, and not just this perpetual rootedlessness.
It is right. It's that really. It's you're right because like it's that perpetual chasing of something that it felt
Yeah.
empty.
It's interesting. Did it like
Please.
all dawn on you at once, or was it kind of like, something that started, the sensor on the car kind of slowly blinking and then flashing red, or was it something different?
Something you said earlier in our conversation really hit home. It gave me chills actually because he talked about our partners being the barometer, right?
Mm.
And so my fiance, now wife, but she was my fiance at the time. I was in Vietnam at first for a couple of months. She flew over, right, to visit, and then eventually moved permanently, I guess, permanently-ish. But I think when she came to see me for the first time, she looked at me, she's like, something's wrong.
Mm.
Like she noticed it right away. I think I was like less patient. I was much like there's this angst right inside. I think part of it is like work stress, but beyond that, and so they're like the cleanest barometers. Like it's a slow build,
Mm.
right? And so that was the first barometer, and the second, like I think I made a mistake at work because there's just too many things going on, right? And so I just felt terrible that day. I'm like, wow. Like what is going on here, right? Like I gotta quit this profession. I was like
Mm.
going deep into depression, and it's like those moments of pain, and you're like, oh, okay, it's like those awakening moments.
Mm.
I'm glad I had it like relatively early in my career sense, right? But still, I don't wish it on anybody. And so with those moments, I'm like, hey, how can I help?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Whether it's that, whether it's mentoring law students, whether it's even fatherhood, right? The first year of being a new dad was rough, right?
Mm.
It was rough, and so what can I do to share the journey and connect with others as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it is interesting that especially when sometimes you spend time away from people,
Yeah,
too, right? Then they see you 2 months later, and you just notice the slow changes in yourself of whatever, becoming less patient, and they might notice something, much more drastic, right? Like even with weight loss or weight gain is the same thing.
yes,
But again, it does come back to, I think, also to rootedness, right? If those people don't really know you, then they can't say that. Someone who knows you deeply, and then not only that, but has the courage, like loves you and has the courage to speak on that, um, can be such a blessing.
it is. You're right, because they're the ones who truly care, right? And they could see those markers and
Yeah.
kind of guide you along, right,
Yeah, totally.
throughout this journey. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that one of the things, a friend a couple of years ago, he's getting divorced or thinking about getting divorced,
mhm.
and he asked me, what do you think I should do? He's not a Christian, so I wasn't speaking from a Christian perspective necessarily, but I said to him, one of the things is that, like, I think he'd been married for 5 years,
Wow.
and I think he said if you leave your partner now, you'll never know 20 years. So you just won't know 20 years of being with that person and what that kind of love can look like, and what that kind of like care and commitment can look like to someone else. And I think like there's something in what you're saying there too about like the rootedness and knowing each other that long, that brings maybe those moments into people's lives where we can speak into their lives, and it's not just popping in and speaking in like a way that might be not nuanced or not actually in proper relationship with people, but that takes a long time of rootedness and care for someone, right?
Yeah, and that's also kind of what I appreciate that in your community and in that reality you have those opportunities to bring parents together to have those kind of discussions, right? To kind of create these deeper relationships where we can, right? I think I think there's a need, there's a desire, there's a yearning, I feel, right, in the world. There's a yearning, a pushback against a lot of the noise around us, right? How do we find that lighthouse, that place of gathering, regardless of faith, right? But just that sense of community, right? That's the biggest point of reckoning.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a built-in feature of the Christian faith, anyways. I'll say that you really can't do it solo; it's impossible. And so we really try to, and are blessed with a great community builder. We try to build community, I should say, and then we are blessed with people who are amazing community builders, like a guy like Dan and many of our other leaders too. Yeah. And actually, I'd say it's one of the biggest struggles would be the wrong word to say, but
Yeah.
it's one of them is people come because they hear about the community, but I'll often tell them, like, we're using the language of trees, and we use that language. It's all throughout the Bible, but it's also, I say, like, it's like you're a tree, you're coming and you're wanting to root yourself in the soil, but it's going to take time.
Yes, that's right.
And so you have to also be generous. We want to be hospitable and generous to you, but you're going to have to be hospitable and generous to the people here, because they're the ones who, you know, you can't just instantly create community. That's not real community.
You mean it's not like a TikTok video that goes viral
Yeah,
and then you
that's right.
suddenly have
That's
10,000 friends?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It's not a dance craze that sweeps the nation. Nothing we do at our community is like a dance craze that sweeps the nation, but it's true. And so it's one thing, as people come, we're so encouraged and excited for I'll say most of them to be there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to build that true sense of community does take time and takes reps and relationship.
There was leading to this, there was a question I wanted to ask you to kind of pick your brain on a little bit too, because you talked about community, you talked about leadership, right? One thing that I also struggle with, and I think I mentioned to you on the phone too, is that we give our full selves in work, right? We give our full selves, whether as in the church or in the community or coaching basketball. And then when we come home, right, at least for me, sometimes it's like the depleted version of myself.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when I get into the most trouble, right? My wife looks at me, it's like, Stephen, like, I see you on stage, all this charisma, and you come home, you look exhausted. Like, why do I get the second-rate version? Do you resonate with that? And like, is that something, or is this just me?
Oh no. Well, I don't resonate with the charisma part. I've got negative of that. Nobody's ever like, yeah, well, this charisma.
She does.
It's no, I 100% do with the sentiment. And I'm like, again, it's one of those things, like, I want to say I have some ideas, but I'm not knocking this out of the park. We should have my wife probably in the front seat, in the back seat, and she would tell you very honestly that I'm not knocking that one out of the park. One thing that's been helpful for me has been a pattern of definitely that's a recognition. I think this is the theory I have, which I guess the internet can tell us if we're right or wrong. I wonder if most people, most husbands or fathers are maybe better at being one or the other. My observation is that's true, and then maybe there's similarities, like it's easier to be a good at work, give everything there, and then not at home, for example. So there's lots of like different ways to take that. I would say for me, in some ways, it's probably easier for me to be a dad with my kids when I'm tired. Although I probably am not knocking that one out of the park when I'm tired either. But it's harder to be a good spouse to my wife. And she gets the last dregs of energy and stuff. Yeah. That's a theory that I have. I don't know that that's true, but it's true in my own life, and that's been helpful for me to realize, like, oh, my tendency actually would be to not give to my wife, but to assume that I'm giving to my family because I'm giving to my kids. Yeah, I don't know if that resonates to you. I don't know if you feel like you fall on one side or the other.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Just to at least first know that I'm not the only one struggling with this. I probably to a bigger degree than you are, by all means, right? It's a constant source of I think the first step to any problem solving is recognition. So I'm recognizing this publicly on my podcast here. Not that I'm gonna get any brownie points for this, but it's interesting though, right? Because I do think sometimes it is easier for me to like give to my daughter, right? It's easier for me to like spend energy to like, she wants to play, okay, fine, I'll do it, right?
Yeah. Especially when they're young too, and it's like maybe an activity that you need to do, right? Can be, if you're task driven, that can also be. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. By all means, it's really interesting to resonate and kind of riff on that with you.
I was gonna say the one other thing for me, it's been helpful. I went away. I try to go away and do these silent retreats, And twice a year would be optimal. 3 times a year would be great, but twice a year, if it happens, I'm really happy. And for me, one of the times I was up there thinking and praying about my vocation and my work, and I just felt a deep nudge from God to be like, why don't you spend as much time praying about like your family? Think about the future of your family, your wife, your kids. And so now that was like 3 or 4 years ago, and so now when I go away, I try to spend a good amount of the time just listening, praying, paying attention to that. I also read a book on either parenting and or marriage often. The one that I return to the most often is a classic from the Gottmans. I think it's 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I always find very convicting, and it's always things that I'm like, I swear I've read this book like 6 times. I don't know how I missed this section, but there's always something that stands out. And so this year, when I just came back from one in January, and there's a whole chapter on being an emotionally healthy partner. Sorry, an emotionally intelligent husband is what they say. And they specifically talk to husbands about this. And that very much stood out to me. It was like one of those blinking red lights. And so that's my long answer of saying it's one of the commitments I'm trying to make right now, is how do I be an emotionally intelligent husband? And then putting practices, into my life to help that happen. My grandma used to have a thing above her kitchen sink that said, it was a little plaque. It said, all the best intentions and all the best wishes will never replace just help with the dishes. And it's like, I think it's the same thing. I can have really good intentions towards being like, let's be a better dad, let's be a better father. And in the end, I need some habits and practices. So one of the things they suggest in the book is just in between work and home, to have some practices of leaving work at work and coming home with gratitude and to face that task. And so one of them is just trying to do a thankfulness index for my wife on the way home. Think of, depending on how much time I have, 3 or 5 things that I'm just really grateful for from my wife. And that I'm not as consistent as I'd like to be, but it's it does really help me enter into that space in a different way when I do it.
This is a great takeaway, and I feel like many who are listening be like, wow, like if this is like a very tangible thing we can try. And I'm feeling it too, right? Because if I reflect back on the many instances when I go straight home from work, right, without that buffer time, it's like the worst times to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because we're carrying that cloud, right?
Yeah.
You're carrying that, tough negotiation I was just on, or like whatever, right? That goes through the house. But having that moment of I guess discernment, that pause, right?
Yeah.
Kind of where the magic can happen. As we round the corner here, literally.
Yeah.
We talked about seasons. We talked about, seasons of life, seasons of the year. As you head into this next chapter, season of fatherhood, what is it that you're looking forward to? Like you have twins, and you have the youngest about to enter high school. Like, what is it about this upcoming season or chapter of fatherhood that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe there's 3 things. I do think, like, the invitation to become emotionally intelligent. It's husband and dad. Yeah, father. I don't know that I'd say looking forward to that. I wouldn't really say that, but like I sense the challenge ahead of me, and I want to prayerfully step into it. The second thing I would say is, like, as a dad, my kids, just seeing the kinds of people that they might become. One of the prayers that I have for my kids is if God would give me the vision of who they're becoming, who he's inviting them to become, and then I would pray and act along with that. And in these teenage years, you start to see that. Sometimes it's heartbreaking when you see maybe not that, but you also get to see it. But it is a joy to have them, very, very, like, they have lots of opinions. So that could be hard, but it also is awesome. And to see the people that they're becoming, there's a real joy in that. Yeah. How about you?
I think for me it is, so I'm in parental leave right now, and then in 2 weeks I go back to work, and so
Yeah.
it's probably a season of adjustment and giving ourselves
Yeah.
grace as we kind of navigate that next schedule shift.
Yeah.
But I think with my oldest, the 4-year-old, like I'm starting to see like little tidbits, right? Like little indicators of who she is and what she likes. And that's been really fun to notice, right?
Mm.
To see her and her grace when she's drawing and dancing and just like laughing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, you're starting to notice these nuances. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. It's I'm also apprehensive of on my return back to work. It really is that's like schedule shifts, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the next immediate season chapter. But kind of these discussions with you and others and Dan, right? It's helped me like, gain clarity because we're not doing this alone, right? And it's
Yeah.
good to kind of share that with the community groups, with the friends around us, with others, and so that's really that's what I'm in this phase right now.
Yeah.
Well, John, hey, it's such a joy to again meet you in person, have you in the car, part of our podcast studio. Really appreciate you for your influence, your impact on the community and beyond. I'm sure many of the show will resonate with the stories and takeaways. We'll do a debrief after this, but thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and whoever's listening, thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Well, we'll do a debrief after this. We'll grab a selfie and then we'll take it from there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you.
All right, friends, that was a super fun and inspiring episode. John, thank you so much for being on the show. I have so many takeaways from our conversation. The first one is being a barometer. So our wives and our children are a barometer of where we're at. And so if we're coming home stressed and anxious and beyond, like our children will reflect that. And so it's so great to kind of get that nugget because we don't know it until we see it in others. And so it's such a good takeaway to really see that our partner, our loved ones, they're a barometer to where we are in life. And so it's such a journey. The second one is really using this notion of discernment. And I'm going to re-listen to this because to me, it's this notion of intentionality, whether it's like bringing that into the family life, taking that time, whether it's that silent retreat that John talks about he takes once or twice a year, but using those gaps, the pause, the time to really be intentional about a time with our family as fathers, as those in a busy career and beyond. And so I'm gonna re-listen because there's so many nuggets. And third, my gosh, I don't know if it's okay to say my gosh on this podcast, but I guess so. It's my podcast, but it's this power of community, and it's something that we are striving to do here at 2.1 Car and beyond is to create a community and to have a community like John with his church at Reality that connects other parents together to talk about these questions openly. And also through this community here, right? We want to have a way to kind of connect everyone here who's listening, who's following, because I think there's power in community. There's power in walking this path with others who've gone down this way. So, I really resonated with that, and I am so grateful and blessed to have folks like yourselves who are listening and following along the journey. So if this resonated, please share out on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Find me on LinkedIn. Let's carry on the conversation. And with that, thank you all for listening in. We'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.